So I'm going to start with a simple basic shape pattern, and the simplest one is a simple polka dot one. So I will go to File and New. And down here where we have our presets, we've encountered A3 size pages and A4 size pages. But this preset that I'm going to use is the 2 to the N one, which is basically just square presets. And from the list of square presets that we have here, I'm going to pick out 256 pixels by 256. And I'm just going to check that the DPI is 72, which is absolutely fine. So I'm going to click on Create. And then I am going to press Control and 0 on my keypad, which will make my canvas size fit into the window of the space available so I can see it a little bit better. The first thing I'm going to do is give my background layer a color. So I'll just make sure over here in the layers palette that the background layer is indeed selected. You can see that it's lit up. And normally your foreground color and background color will be black and white. So the first thing to do is select a foreground color. So in this instance, I'm going to go for a nice pink, pale pink color and click on OK. So I have that now in the foreground. And then the next step is to use the paint bucket tool, which you'll sometimes get mistaken for the gradient tool. I think it normally defaults to that one. So if you left click and hold any of the icons that have this little caret icon and the little triangle icon in the bottom right hand corner, means that there's more icon or more tools in there that do the same thing. So I'm going to pick the paint bucket tool, left click on this, and then I can simply just left click inside of my canvas and it's just going to fill that up with the color. So the next step for this is to basically just I want to put a yellow circle in the middle. So what I might do is just add in a new layer over here in my layers palette, and I can do that by clicking on the new layer button here, which will add in another layer. Alternatively, I can go to layer and click on new and click on layer, and that will add in a layer for me as well. So whichever way you actually want to do it, I'll just get rid of layer 2 there by selecting layer 2 and clicking on the delete key. So let's get rid of the layer. Now you need to make sure that when we're adding in the circle that you're on this new layer here, so you won't see anything happening because this is all transparent pixels. There's nothing actually on this layer yet, whereas our background layer has our pink background on it. So I click on layer 1 to select it, and I can use my ellipse select tool over here if I wanted to make a circle. So if I left click and hold on the selection tool there, I can get access to the ellipse or the rectangle. So I'm going to select ellipse, and I'm going to move my cursor to around about here, maybe just up in the top left hand corner, and I'm going to left click and hold down the left click mouse button and then just drag. Now I'm getting an oval, which you might want, but we're going for polka dot here, so I'm going to hold down the shift key. So I haven't let go of my left mouse key yet, I'm still holding that down, and I'm holding down the shift key until I get it to the size that I want it to be, so roughly about there. Now I let go of the left mouse click and I let go of shift, and I've made a selection there. And while I still have the selection tool highlighted, when I move the mouse inside the selection, it gives me that four-way arrow thing, which means I can left click and just drag that around to get it lined up in the center if I wanted to. And you'll see those guides will pop up for you when whatever you're moving is just intersecting with the center. So there, when I have that cross, I know that it's bang in the middle. So the next thing that I want to do here is to basically just fill that up with color, because if I just turn off the visibility of the background here, now you'll see there's actually nothing on these layers. They're totally empty. This checkerboard effect in the background is the kind of universal sign for empty pixels, so transparent. So I'll just turn the visibility of the background layer back on there by clicking on that eye. Now I want to fill this with yellow, so I'm going to go to my foreground color, click there, and then I can just slide this down until I get to the yellow range. So maybe a little bit of orange in it, just a tiny bit, so a bit of a deeper yellow there, that's okay. And then click on OK, and then I have yellow selected in my foreground. Again, I can come back to my paint bucket tool, and I'll click on paint bucket. And then I'm just going to click inside of the selection that I've made, and I just need to make sure again that layer 1 is selected here. So if I click inside of there, it's going to give me that. If I accidentally, I'll just edit undo, so step backward. If I accidentally clicked outside of the the circle, it'll still only fill in that part of it because we have a selection made. So whenever you make a selection, whatever photopea or Photoshop does next will only happen inside of that selection. So um, once I have that done, I can get rid of the selection then by going up to select and deselect. Okay, so that's essentially going to be the formation of our pattern. So the next step to actually make this into a usable pattern is to go to edit, and then come all the way down to define new and click on pattern. And a message just pops up there saying pattern added, but we won't see anything. So in order to actually apply the pattern, what I want to do is apply it to an A4 page. So I'm going to go to create a new file, so file, new, and I can come into my print presets this time, and I'm just going to set myself up with an A4 page that's portrait. So if I click on that, it adjusts this to the exact dimensions of an A4 page in millimeters. The one thing that I am going to change here is the DPI. So 300 is just too high, 120 is absolutely fine for our purposes. And then the last thing I'm going to do just before I create this is give it a proper name. So my full name, and then just call it 1. So this is going to be our pattern 1. So click on create, and that will give me my A4 page. One of the easiest ways to actually apply the pattern is just through a layer style. So because we've set up this document, we only have one layer. It's just the background layer by default, which is always locked and it's always visible. So we want to add a layer style to the background. So we can come up to layer in their menu and come down to layer style, and the one that we want to use is pattern overlay. So if I click on pattern overlay, it will default to Photopea's ganky, horrible 80s wallpaper pattern. But if we come over here in the layer style dialog box that pops up, there's lots of options in here, but the one that we want to change is this one here. It's the one that's in the middle that says pattern. And when we click on the down arrow there, we'll see the pattern that we've created. It's usually the last one there. You can see pattern 1. It just gets thrown in at the end. So we can click on that, and then it'll cover our A4 page with the pattern. Now the other setting that you might want to change here is just the scale. So you can fiddle around with this, and you can bring the scale of your pattern and make it much smaller. So there's way more dots in there. So we're kind of channeling Kasama here with all of our dots. So I'll click on OK. And that's my very first pattern. That's the simplest pattern that I can make. So now I can go to File, and I just want to export this either as a PNG or a JPEG. In this case, I'm going to just export mine as a JPEG. It'll ask me what size I want it to be or what quality. I can just leave all those as the default and just click on Save. And now that's downloaded. So that's my very first pattern that I've made just using basic shapes.